Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome to the DCEU Roundtable. Can everybody hear me okay? Am I right here?
I can hear you.
I hear you.
Okay, all right, everybody can hear me. Okay, cool.
Yep.
So, all right, like last time I did this, I was talking for like about a good 3 minutes and no one could hear me. So I just wanted to make sure. So what's up, guys? All right, so here's the deal, right? We haven't done this since maybe about a year about a year, and we basically this show, and I'm gonna call it a show, is basically me hanging out with my friends, having comic shop talk, doing what we normally would do at the comic book store, which is talking about geeky things at length and in too much detail. So welcome to the show. This is the DCEU Roundtable. We're going to be doing more roundtables in the future. And when I say, of course, the DCEU, we're going to talk about the current state of the DCEU, but also kind of address the past of the DCEU, and then we're going to zero in on like possibly where it's going, some of the internet controversies around where it's potentially going. So let's just get to it, guys. So I'll just start introducing people. First up, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Action to Go himself, Scarzella.
Hey, everybody. What's up?
All right. And also hanging out with me is filmmaker Joe Carr.
Hey, everybody.
That's a nice backdrop. I like that backdrop. That backdrop is crucial.
Serious.
That's really nice.
A little spoilers from a film I'm working on. Might as well show it.
That's true. Might as well show it. That's absolutely true.
Always show it.
And last but not least, PREVIEWSworld's personal troll, but also he has a YouTube channel that's actually pretty good. Mystical Green Beanie himself. What's going on, Joaquin?
Hola, ¿cómo está? I don't speak French.
Okay. All right, people. So here's the deal. I'm trying to figure out actually how do I get it so that everyone can be seen in a nice little fancy grid. There you go. All right. So here's the DCEU, right? So I don't even know if we can technically call that anymore. I mean, I guess like the new direction is now that it's now going to be called DC Studios. Announced like a couple of weeks ago that James Gunn of films such as Slither and the Guardians of the Galaxy movies was going to be taking over the DC Comics movie universe, and so that's been kind of has kind of ruffled some line, which seems to be the case every time we get into a conversation about DC cinematic ventures at this point in time, right? So before we dive into the James era, right, and what could be the James Gunn era, let's talk a little bit about the past incarnation of the DCEU, right? So first of all, I want to know love / what did you hate about the previous version of the DCEU? And of course, we're starting with Man of Steel Up, and I'm going to basically take it on over to Mr. Derek Scarzella of Action to Go first. What's up, Derek?
What's up, man? So what were my favorite highlights? I'm going to say I'm just going to go from best to worst, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say my absolute favorite was the Justice League movie. The Snyder director's cut is probably the pinnacle of the DCEU. It's like straight cut DCEU. And then Batman versus Superman or whatever that movie was called. And then I want to say Suicide Squad. And then Aquaman. The Aquaman movies were pretty solid. And when I say Suicide Squad, I mean James Gunn Suicide Squad.
Yes. The Suicide Squad.
And then after Aquaman, everything just sucked. Except for the newest The Batman, which I don't think is technically a
right.
DCEU movie. It's like its own separate little thing.
Yeah, so, which is interesting, right? What about you, Mystical Green Beanie? How did you what did you feel about the Man of Steel Up version of the DC film universe?
There's some good. There's definitely some bad, but generally speaking, I was like, it's kind of. I really like Man of Steel. That's like definitely my favorite for a lot of personal reasons. That's like one of the films that like really got me kind of like into like narrative storytelling.
Oh, interesting.
So yeah, like I don't know, I've always liked comics, always like movies. That was like the movie that like really kind of like made me go like, oh, what if I want to tell stories? But so yeah, Man of Steel is kind of like a weird thing that's over there for me. But I like that movie like regardless if it was part of like a cinematic universe or not. But I like Batman v Superman, the Ultimate Edition, quite a bit. And I guess we'll talk about like why we kind of like some of these movies or didn't like some of these movies. But I like that movie quite a bit. Suicide Squad I thought was like a narrative nightmare, and like an editing like abortion. Just like Jesus Christ, how did this thing? But it's weird because like I think the aesthetic of that movie is really good. Like I really like the idea of, hey, what if criminals looked like criminals and were gross and like cringy? Like yeah, I don't know. There's stuff there that I kind of liked, but I don't know. Beyond that, like the first one, the Wonder Woman was pretty good. Zack Snyder's Justice League was pretty good. The Suicide Squad was pretty good. But like Wonder Woman 84, Jesus, that.
Oh God, yeah.
All right, yep. Let's have a movie set in Washington D.C. in the 80s and no black people. All right. All right. Well, okay, Patty. All right. Well, cool. That's the thing.
That's a fair point.
They did show such a specific part of DC, like the mall. DC,
right?
Also, George
the tourist traps.
1984. No,
right.
All right, cool. But I don't know. In like Black Adam, we're gonna talk about Black Adam, but like just it's offensive. we can just let it. Just it's all right.
Just stop there.
It's all right. Ironically, it feels very much like DC just before the New 52. Like I know people like the crap on the New 52, but like, okay, for those of y'all who remember, post Final Crisis, there was a whole like year-long era where everyone was like, it feels like there's gonna be a reboot. Just stop it, just kill it. kill it, start over. That's where I'm at with the movies. Just kill it and start over.
Just hit the reset button. What about you, Astray J, Mr. Joe Carabeo, filmmaker? Give us some insight. Like, what is your perspective here?
Okay, so I really enjoyed Man of Steel because of the fact that it kept on, like, it gave me like hope of like, oh man, they could be doing something with this. And it just felt like every single movie, because there's that feeling whenever you leave a movie and then you're like, dude, they did that thing. They did that because before that, the Superman that we got, the Superman Returns era, with the Brandon Routh, what did people want? They wanted violence. Right? It's like, they called for the violence. The world was like, we want Superman to, literally tear it up. You got what you asked for. But then it's the same thing as like, not everyone can eat everything on the buffet table. They need that specific meal sometimes. But afterwards, whenever I watched one of those movies, I never got that, the Batman verse, Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, add on 10 other names, King of Kings, whatever you want to. It just kept on. There was like this gluttonous feeling. You're like, it is what that part's like. I like every time I watched one of the movies, I was like, you almost got it, but there's still that bit that's missing that just makes it as great as like Batman the Animated Series or something like that, But I really had a good time. I had high hopes for Suicide Squad because like I'm a fan of Suicide Squad and Task X. Like to me, a heist DCU movie, like that's freaking badass. And I love stuff from the perspective of the villains. That's the stuff I write. So that's me being self-indulgent. But again, I had high hopes for Suicide Squad because I was like, Margot Robbie playing Harley Quinn. I dreamed of that when she was on Wolf of Wall Street. I heard that voice and I dreamt. I was like, that's freaking Harley Quinn, guys. And to see her do that. I mean, I paid money to see that. The story was whatever.
Actually, I should.
There's a
I was going to say, I should clarify. We're talking about the first Suicide Squad.
Yeah, the first, the
right.
David
Ayer's Suicide Squad. Yeah.
I mean, because like, come on, man. That's I already laid my money down already when I saw her casting. The Will Smith being there sort of surprised because I don't know about you, but during that time I was like, oh man, he's sort of still doing movies.
I think that's fair. Well, that was the weird thing about that movie. I think is it was Will Smith kind of like clocking in some relevance still. I kind of feel at that point.
Oh, God,
yeah. Just sort of.
But I'm
cashing in.
Like the Suicide Squad, Peacemaker. Like I'm enjoying that era just because I feel like they sort of know because there's an absurdity to superheroes, right? And I feel like there's that set. It's something you revel in this absurdity of superheroes, people in tights, like tearing each other up, or you try to like play it hardcore. You try to play it hard. And I'm sort of an absurdist in a way of making the absurd serious, which I feel like is what Watchmen is. Because if you see like the designs of people in tights and stuff, the idea is like, well, how do you make that mean something? I feel like the Suicide Squad was in that world.
Oh yeah.
Just the fact, I mean, like if people haven't seen it, just I love the fact of like, this is what we're going to tell you what Suicide Squad is going to be. We're going to kill them. In the beginning. We're going to put over everyone in the commercials and we're just going to kill them.
I'm having trouble following now. We're talking about the Suicide Squad,
Suicide
Squad,
or a Suicide Squad.
Or our Suicide Squad.
So it's still so confusing after all these years.
It's interesting. Like I think of all four of us are kind of in the camp of the Suicide Squad is actually a good movie. Like the most recent interpretation of it. And that definitely is at the top of all the DCEU movies that have come out thus far.
I can't tell you, in all honesty, at this point in my life, I literally can't tell you if a movie is good. I can just tell you if I enjoyed it and if I did not waste my time. And I think that's all I really need.
That's totally fair.
So please listen to me.
Yeah. There's so many things that you just watch because you enjoy. And I think like giving it's as long as you didn't waste your time, that's the most important part.
I totally get that. I have the same problem with comics now, and I think that's an aspect of that is when you start making them yourself, you kind of understand how difficult it is to even get off the ground in the first place. But and it's interesting because like I actually did not like Man of Steel. I was upset with Man of Steel, particularly the whole Zod thing, and I've softened on that a little bit. And when I said the Zod thing, I mean him snapping his neck. I just thought it was like a bridge too far. But was that
I want to.
Snapped.
the neck being snapped? You said?
No, is
He's
that
like,
when he
the
snapped?
snap? Snap.
No, not the snap. That the other snap. Yes, the other the snap. Batman versus Superman. I did not hate the theatrical version. I just didn't like the act. I thought the stuff leading up to the final act was really good. Then I saw the director's cut, and like I actually appreciated that movie a lot more. Still did not like the final act. I thought was a decent effort. I think it was probably the most like the comics in a lot of ways. And I thought Patty Jenkins did a great job. I don't know what happened with 19. I think Aquaman is trash. I hate Aquaman. It's overlong. It's goofy. It's just I don't understand how that movie made $1 billion. If I had to, and Shazam was decent. I thought Shazam was decent. We haven't talked about Shazam.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, that's
it was decent.
Can I talk about it? Can we not?
Well, what's your beef with Shazam?
Well, just to your point, like you don't like the Aquaman movie because it was goofy. I loved the Aquaman movie because it was goofy. But the crazy thing is, I don't like the Shazam movies for this. And I don't want to skip ahead. I didn't like the Shazam movies because they were goofy. And I think like that's sort of the weird oscillation that these movies have. Like we were just talking about Suicide Squad versus the Suicide Squad.
Right.
And the first Suicide Squad had this weird like effect where the marketing campaign, I think, had more of a pop culture phenomenon than the movie did. And I think we did re-edit the movie to match like what was actually going on in the trailer because the split was so bad. But then you have the Suicide Squad, which is this like weird rock and roll film that just works and somehow manages to grab pathos and sort of makes you care. And
it's interesting because the Suicide Squad is the movie that I feel like the first movie wanted to be in those trailers, which is really.
I also want to add, I totally forgot to mention the whatever blah 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 Harley Quinn, whatever they added to the title.
Oh God, yeah, the Emancipation of Harley Quinn.
Birds of Prey.
Birds of Prey.
That's always a Birds of Prey.
Yeah, did anybody even watch that?
No.
I watched it.
I mean, I've seen it. Like
I've never tried. That movie came and went.
It did.
No one even talked about it. And was it because of the pandemic?
It was something to talk about at that time.
Yeah,
Oh,
at the top of the pandemic. Yeah,
it's a weird movie in that like I've seen a lot of people, primarily on like Twitter and whatnot, defend it. And I have like a lot of friends who are like artists and filmmakers who they really enjoyed it. I saw it. I see the appeal of why people would like it. It is very much like a post like Me Too era movie, like a lot of female superhero movies that are being kind of made nowadays.
It's Hollywood's version of accountability.
Yeah, which is not taking accountability, but
no.
But like it's like largely inoffensive. Like but like as a fanboy like of particularly Cassandra Cain, that's my favorite. That's like one of my favorite characters in comics. Just kind of takes a movie that is like a 6 and takes it to like a 2.
Interesting. Okay.
Just,
to me that was such a great Saturday morning rated R just a show.
Right,
That's to me when I was watching this, I was like, dude, this has that same Saturday morning aesthetic, but it's like I guess it's trying to be rated R, but it wasn't rated R. I forget what it was, but it has that pull. But I love
the Harley Quinn show.
I'm not gonna lie, I love that first that first third of the movie because again, it's that absurdist. Like half of that story was like Harley Quinn talking about that sandwich that she really loved.
Oh yeah, forgot about that. Jeez.
I'm not gonna lie, dude. I made that sandwich so many times after that.
It did look really good.
You are deep in the Harley Quinn.
They knew they were doing.
Well, it was a bagel and egg and cheese.
That movie is also very much a post Jimmy Palmiotti and Amanda Conner era Harley Quinn comic book movie. And I mean that in and of itself is its own can of worms. There are a lot of people who don't like what Jimmy Palmiotti and Amanda Conner did with that character. And like that's like one of those like online debates where it's like, guys, it's been like 15 years. Y'all gotta get over it. This is just
no, that's real. That's real.
Harley is just Deadpool with like, you know, double D's or I guess G's depending on who draws it. But like, that's all it is, man. That's you gotta get over it, man.
Here's the thing though, now. Here's the thing with like pretty much like all DCU movies and pretty much any superhero movies, since we've all watched every one of these and movies beyond, we know what's gonna happen. It's like big battle at the end. Yeah. You know, we're all leading to the big group up battle. You know, that's what makes, you know, what is the uniqueness that we're looking for now in these superhero movies, you know? And to me, it was like, oh, it's this sandwich. Oh, it's you know, it's like one of these little things that I can take away from, you know, like I don't know, that's like, oh, and Man of Steel, oh, Superman with a beard. That's that was to me.
Well, you know, I mean, Joaquin and I were talking about this yesterday. Like these characters, the DC characters more so than the Marvel characters, have had so many reinterpretations because they've been in the popular culture mindset for so long. You know that it's kind of hard to pin down what is the right interpretation of them. I'm sorry, Derek. What were you about to say?
I was going to say, like, I think the interpretation is sort of the problem with some of these characters.
I agree.
Like,
I agree.
The key difference between just the DC and MCU period, like as comics, a lot of the DC characters are golden age, right? Whereas a lot of the Marvel stuff is silver age, and a lot of those influences were like nuclear and rockets and like space
and hippie
hippie stuff, exactly. Whereas like the golden age was goofier. And some of that goofy stuff makes its way into these movies, and I think that the movies trip over themselves to explain it. Whereas if they had streamlined it and done what James Gunn did with the Suicide Squad, you just run past it. You just dive in. This is the character. Just take it as it is, and then make it say fun stuff. And get into crazy situations. Don't get into the lore, and that's why I didn't like Shazam. I didn't like some of these other movies or like Green Lantern. Green Lantern really goes into how the guy's powered by will and stuff. And I'm sorry, in the 21st century, that's just a little goofy, man. Like it should just be green energy, and then he finds out it's the will or something. Like keep it mysterious.
Right?
And just keep it. You have a ring that can do fun stuff. Let's just run with it. And I think that's why these movies, as opposed to the Marvel stuff, which they've had stinkers, but it's been consistent. The DC stuff is like, oh, I love this, or this is dumb. And you know, I actually softened my stance on Man of Steel. Man of Steel wasn't bad until like the first half of that film, but then it gets a bit too hardcore and whatnot. But like I should have said Wonder Woman from 2017 was a good film because it actually was pretty decent. But
it's
Wonder Woman 2 was so bad, it poisoned my memory of Wonder Woman. and you know, but anyway, just to talk to your point about goofiness and how it can work or it can't. And James Gunn was the master of that with Guardians of the Galaxy, and he was able to make it play with the Suicide Squad.
I mean, if anything, that's what James Gunn was based off of, going back from Slither, you know, all those things from Lolly Love. He loves, you know, when you can tell someone loves that goofy genre to make it so good. You know what I mean? There's certain things where, you know, in a certain director's mind, it could be a joke, but in another director, it's like a piece of art that is still a joke. You know,
that's 100% what I think James Gunn, and we can actually jump ahead to this. Like, what James Gunn brings to the table.
Shazam, real quick. I feel like Shazam could have actually made more money because I actually personally feel like they put it out during the wrong time. Because Aquaman came out during that December era, right? And then Shazam came out during the spring. But if you watch Shazam, that's a freaking Christmas movie.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
when I saw that, I was like, "Are you freaking? You're leaving money on the table with this pretty much a family film."
Yeah,
and then you have Aquaman, which is a video game, and
dude, Aquaman had sharks with laser beams on their heads.
It did. It took the Austin Powers joke and made it for real. Like that's actually one of the moments I actually really started to hate that movie, and I was like, "This is actually Powers joke." Like. On the big screen, being told straight. I was like, I hate this so much right now. Mind you, I'm not a big Aquaman person.
Yeah, but Manta looked badass though. He looked badass.
Manta looked great. Manta looked phenomenal.
They actually did Manta
You gotta take something good from each one of these movies, right? There's something, at least one thing they all did right. Manta was great.
Manta was great.
To that point though, about it being like kind of a goofy video game though.
Mm-hmm.
This one of my buddies brought up to me about the DC films inherently. This universe is very silly and goofy, and like DC kind of flourished through the Silver Age because of that. But they kind of started to falter from like the post 80s hardcore like boom trend, because that's when there was this real push to like make everything more realistic, more grounded, which is really like, I guess, the intellectual way of saying make it like Marvel, which that's the big thing that I think a lot of people omit in a lot of these conversations when we compare DC and Marvel. DC Comics does not start out as like a cohesive shared universe. They are like remnants of the pulp hero era, along with like Tarzan and John Carter of Mars and whatnot.
Oh yeah.
Buck Rogers, like they are those pulp characters that somehow endeared through the McCarthy era of the Comics Code Authority, where comics had to be like neutered, so you couldn't have Superman like punching evil landlords and war criminals. He had to fight the evil aliens who were trying to come to our lands and take our women. You know, he like a lot of these characters kind of had to become like really like Family Guy sketches to just kind of stick around. But Marvel didn't quite have that problem. Marvel had the benefit of two things. One, they weren't nearly as big as DC Comics throughout the 60s and 50s and 60s and 70s. So Nixon, who was like, "Oh, I'll stay relevant. Let's have Elvis. Kids love Elvis." Like those era of adults, they didn't know what a Marvel was. So there was no push to censor Marvel comics as severely as DC Comics. So they kind of got away with like doing whatever they wanted, which was a major benefit for storytelling back in that era. But also, Marvel pioneered the shared universe concept with superheroes.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And really kind of like took this D&D style approach to, okay, well, here you have the street level hero, they're over there. Here you have the cosmic hero over there. Here you have the like interdimensional, like psychedelic mystic here, and like here's how this universe works, and it's all like this one living, breathing organism that you know, Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko and Larry Lieber and Don Heck and all those guys and Stan Lee all kind of strung together. And DC didn't have that. That's not in DC's DNA.
No, it's not. Actually, I would actually, you know, my has been for a long time that the DC movies should not worry about continuity. Exactly. And it's for that exact reason, because it's not baked into what makes DC. We grew up on a DC that had continuity because we came into these comics through the late 80s and the 90s. But you got to really have to look at it from the late 80s to the 90s up until, I want to say, what, the 52? Up until 52? Like, that's a really small period in time in DC's history when you really think about where they were doing continuity.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because then after that, it's 52, New 52, what was it, the DC Rebirth and all this other stuff. DC's been less about continuity than it has been about continuity.
Yeah.
So
I love, you know what I love, and that's hilarious about DC Comics. Well, for one thing, if I was a writer, in which I hope to be, like in the DC world or any one of those combined universes or anything like that, it would actually rip my mind apart having to deal with all these other extensions of like, I can't do this because someone over here. I was like, why? Just cut it off. But I love the fact that in the comics, or even maybe it's going to be happening in the movies, that DC takes this biblical stance. Because like in the Bible, it's like, okay, the world has gone too far. Let's flood it and just kill everyone. I feel like that's what DC does. Crisis. Let's just kill everyone off and do that.
Crisis is the Great Flood.
Well, even like just standard DC comics, like I was rereading Superman Ending Battle, which is a great comic, by the way, if anyone hasn't read it. Just a standard Superman story that midway through, I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't read it, but like midway through Metropolis, like all of Metropolis, under siege by supervillains, the city looks like 9/11 times a million. You got like Master Jailer like stripping people naked and like putting them in barbed wire chains, and Superman like punches Neutron into space and then uses his heat vision to knock him back into Earth's orbit, so he ends up nuking Panama. It's like, this is the regular Superman story.
You're right.
Like, they've destroyed the world like 10 times over already. Like, what is like
Right.
that's the scale to which DC operates, which
Yeah, true.
from a modern audience perspective, who does kind of crave the more intimate, the personable, because I'm smart. I like personable stories. I'm above the big hoo-ha. Just give me the humanity. Like that's
boom,
not,
shake.
that's not DC's thing. DC's thing is go big or go home. If
That's
the
true.
world hasn't exploded, then you didn't make a DC movie.
But
If,
what
you're,
I-
We're-
if you're not making a Justice League movie that is not to the scale of like Clash of the Titans or Jason and the Argonauts, you didn't make a Justice League movie.
That's a good point. But say,
That's a great
hold on, I'm
point.
gonna let's jump over to Derek real quick. What are you about to say,
Yeah.
Derek?
No, that is an amazing point. And again, I'm going to go back to the Suicide Squad, because James Gunn sort of brings that to the movie.
He does.
You have the big starfish creature, whatever it is, like
Oh, yeah.
Starro.
Starro. Hey, he makes Starro freaking work.
He makes Starro terrifying.
And he makes it terrifying, and he makes it work, and he modernizes it, but it's still the same concept. He does jujitsu with that freaking concept for that movie.
He does.
Yeah.
He does.
And that's something other filmmakers have struggled with, but that's why I appreciated the Aquaman film, because it did go big and go home.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or it did go big and go hard or whatever. And I think that's the struggle that Snyder had with this, because before, you got to give Snyder credit. Like Superman and Batman were icons. Everybody knew they were icons. And because of that, they were afraid. And Snyder did try and bring it down to earth. He did try and modernize it with like the Navy SEALs concepts or whatever you want to say. Like post 9/11 militarism. Let's call it that. But he did try. And I will say, like, the good things they did were the look. I think these characters looked great. I think that well, that's about it. But they tried.
Well, actually, I want to task you guys on this, because you pick up a good point. I think it's easy. There's two camps here, right? You either love Snyder or you hate him at this point, right? But I actually want to point out Snyder did well, right? And one of the things I think is the overall look. Like, I think that ultimately people will say that it was too dark, it was too that, but then sometimes, I'll be honest with you, sometimes you look at a Marvel movie and it feels like everyone's behind a green screen or a blue screen now, and they're right, exactly. Like it seems like these people are completely detached from reality. Good directors know how to create that illusion and not break that illusion, right? But I mean, there are movies, I'm thinking of Captain Marvel, to be honest, where I've had moments where I'm like, oh my God, is anything in this real? Like, you know what I mean? And Snyder definitely brought that. He brought a texture, a groundedness to it. And I'm not just talking about the grittiness, just sort of like it felt palpable. I will also say that I really, really do think that ultimately his casting was spot on. I think
Go
ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go for it.
No, I agree. I agree 110% with that. Like Gal Gadot, Henry Cavill, Jason Momoa, Ben Affleck. I think Ben Affleck did great. And I'm still sad we're not getting a Ben Affleck Batman movie.
Yeah.
Like, I thought the Batman was the best part of, it's always the best part somehow. Like, Warner Brothers cannot screw up Batman, which is but one of the only downsides is we didn't get a Ben Affleck directed Batman, because, guys, he's actually a really good director. Like, he's a really good filmmaker at this point. He could have done something fun.
He could have done something really interesting with it, yeah.
And Henry Cavill, I think he did great. And I think the whole drama about him recently is a testament to how well he did recently in that role, and how much people appreciate him in that role.
I think on the regards to Zack Snyder, and from a filmmaker perspective, because I don't know him personally and I don't want to attest to any of that stuff, but I feel like no one really, I don't understand why there's actually all this heavy hate anyway. like Zack Snyder was already doing sort of the impossible to begin with. He did no one thought that he'd do the Watchmen movie. He did the Watchmen movie, and he didn't even like it didn't even feel like he was flexing. It just felt like he could just do it. You know what I mean? That's why they gave him the trust to handle these things, because it didn't seem like he was stressing over it, because that's in his wheelhouse. And it's so crazy for people like, oh, Zack Snyder sucks. Zack Snyder sucks. All these people who just eat chips on the couch and don't go outside and try to make a movie themselves. You know, it's one of those things like, listen, dude, like, you don't understand. This guy devised this amazing kick-ass team from top to bottom. You know what I mean? I would say personally, he puts too much film grain in his films, but that's a stylistic.
It's a stylistic choice, right?
Yeah. But like revolutionary too, man. Like still, he one of the first people to literally just go, let's do all this digital. You know what I mean? He's a revolutionary almost every step of the way. But
he's also one of the people, just real quick, I'm sorry. He's also one of the first people to take it seriously. I just want to throw that out there. Yeah.
And dude, he's an extreme hard worker. And I mean, maybe people had it out for him because that's how it is sometimes when people can get too much opportunity. You know what I mean? You're not going to like everything he does, but I don't think anyone should be like, dude, we hate him and have like I mean, I guess there's the opposite of people want to bring him back too, right?
Yeah.
All right. I respect the hell out of him, so.
Yeah. Well, just to your point, Joe, I think it's easy to forget like how special 300 was when it came out.
Yeah.
Like that movie, I don't know anybody who didn't walk out of that movie jazzed, pumped.
Right. Just ready to just punch in air.
A mixed up
that
level.
Movie helped normalize comic book films to begin with, like along with Sin City and X-Men and a couple other the late 90s, early 2000s revolution with superhero films.
I'm going to be serious though. When they first announced he was doing Superman, I was like, I don't know. And it's weird, but when I saw Sucker Punch and I saw the degrees of the effects that he's doing and all the stuff he's pulling off, and like these, you know, these chicks flying in the air and slicing, you know, like all this stuff and big giant monsters. And I saw that, I was like, he's gonna freaking pull off this Superman. This Sucker Punch might not make sense at all, but still, like you give him a Christopher Nolan, right? You give him a Christopher Nolan. Let's not forget, Christopher Nolan was still attached to Man of Steel.
He's a producer.
Yeah. So you have him behind that.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with like Alita with Robert Rodriguez. You have Alita, and then you have James Cameron.
Brilliant. Yeah.
So these team ups, you know, you get that good mentorship.
Actually, you know, just as an aside, you made me think about this just now. I wish that was more of a common thing. Like I wish it was more like get the veteran director and pair him up with somebody who's just never quite had, because Robert Rodriguez is a veteran director, but he's never had the big shot like he did with Battle Angel Alita, and just put them on. You know what I mean?
Well, you gotta remember Batman and Robin.
Well, I want to
like the Joel Schumacher movie.
No. Batman Forever did have that team up because Tim Burton still produced that.
That's true.
Joel
Schumacher.
Go for it. My bad.
Oh, so I just want to throw this out there. I think that Chris Nolan may have been the problem with the Superman film.
I think that's fair.
Like, I think that Snyder needed to be reined in a little bit more, or his concept sharpened a little bit more, because if there weren't problems with Man of Steel, people wouldn't talk about them. You know what I mean? And I had my own problems with it. Like, I thought the death of Pa Kent was wrong. I thought the ending could have been different. You know that?
Oh, you know what? Yeah.
People,
but he was just like this, and then he
right here.
Yeah.
Just gets sucked up by a tornado.
Yeah.
Don't save me.
Yeah. But he could have caught him, right? He could catch him.
He could have done it. He could have inhaled the hurricane.
Yeah. Like hurricanes aren't a problem for Superman, but a heart attack is. And that's personal. Right. That's why I sort of wish like James Cameron was in charge of the DCEU. Just to talk about someone current. Like I think Cameron could have reined in Snyder a bit more. It wouldn't have happened. And this is a total concept I'm throwing out just because it's Friday. But I think Cameron probably would have been able to handle the DCEU better than Christopher Nolan, because Christopher Nolan's a bit of a film snob. And he wasn't able to rein this in enough to
remember the TV show Entourage? Remember Entourage? That in Entourage, James Cameron was supposed to do Aquaman.
Yeah, that was right.
And then they did it.
Well, I guess
they did Medellin too. If you think about it, like Narcos on Netflix was really good. Anyway, we're getting off track. Let's
one thing I love about DC and also with the animation, and also hopefully they see in the movies, is that there is a class system of superheroes. Like there's that Booster Gold level, and there's this. I love actually seeing that lower level of like these, like, you know, the C list trying to deal with the A list existing. I do like seeing that.
Yeah.
Like I remember seeing that in Justice League Unlimited, where they'd have that something big bad happening, and then they're in like the Watchtower, and Martian Manhunter is sending people off to do stuff, and Booster Gold's like, "Do I get to go out? You got crowd.
Put me in the game, coach."
Yeah.
Hey, I'm sorry, Joaquin. Joaquin, you were about to say something. Go ahead.
No, it's just you guys are bringing up Man of Steel, and it's kind of weird that looking back, I still don't quite get. No, I do get why that movie kind of ruffled a lot of feathers at the time, because it definitely is not a representation of pop culture Superman, like to any degree. But to be fair, pop culture Superman is still stuck in 1978 with Christopher Reeve.
Yeah, that's fair.
But that movie is one written by David Goyer, who I have a lot of problems with David Goyer.
There's your problem right there.
Yeah, like I'm not a big David Goyer guy, but the thing I do like about him is that, and like, the reason I kind of admire the idea of like having him write that movie is that he is a comics guy.
No, he is, and you know what? I will credit Batman Begins to him as well.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, I can't knock it, of course.
And for better or worse, Man of Steel is a straight up comic, like Superman comic book movie. Like it is. In fact, you can kind of place the 4 books it is based on. It takes like the structure of Superman
Birthright.
One. It takes Birthright. It takes narrative elements of what's the one Jeff Johns did with Gary Frank? Secret Origin. And it also takes like the visual framework of John Byrne's Man of Steel, and also like the weird lore behind Krypton and how they're all like Matrix pod babies that like there's a weird like Warhammer 40K.
There really was
like Krypton that John Byrne kind of did with that universe when he rebooted or when he helped reboot DC in the 80s. But like now that movie's riffing off of comics real hard.
It is.
So like I mean, for me, I was like, I get why the pop culture audience isn't behind it, but like comic book guys, this is.
Well, I think
they're doing what you did.
Yeah.
Like,
I think there's certain truths. I feel like there are certain truths that we kind of, and I say truths in quotations, right, that we accept about some of these that again are not grounded 100% in reality. But like, for example, you know, I remember there being a big stink about Batman not killing, right? Like a few years ago, and this also comes up a lot of times. And like, you know, people always say Batman doesn't kill, but here's the thing: post-crisis, Batman doesn't kill, right? And so you have a whole generation of people that have really locked into that because, truthfully, the writers and artists have locked in that idea. DC Comics locked in that idea. But truth be told, Batman was in the 40s. You know, Batman was killing people in the early 80s, truthfully.
Batman's a killer, guys.
Batman is a killer. And so that is a set of like false truths, you know, about the character. But it's kind of a generational thing in that regard.
Yeah.
And I think that's the same thing with the Superman thing. It's like, you know, we were given this post-crisis version of Superman. And that's kind of been accepted as the version for so long. You say Christopher Reeve, but of course the post-crisis Man is based off of Christopher Reeve. So yeah.
I guess that's the big challenge too with Marvel versus DC is like DC, they've existed for so long with so many interpretations that people cared about. But then if you have Marvel, like, you know, the common audience didn't really have their interpretation of Iron Man. It's like, it's Iron Man. It's like, you don't have another, like, what is another interpretation of Iron Man? This man in a suit, he's rich, right? What else can you do? It's sort of like, it's there for you. Spider-Man is, I guess, if you go deep with Clone Saga and all that, but they still sort of kept in what they do. They still play in that realm. But like DC, like they're I would say so well-rounded with changes and all the modifications that as a creator, if you want to pull from, there's so much you can pull from. But the fact is the audience has no idea because they don't read comics every day, or the normal audience out there.
Well, I think it's also important to remember that in the 2000s, everything flipped. Like prior to that, like Superman in the 70s was huge. Batman in the 80s was huge.
Yeah.
DC always outsold Marvel, unless I'm wrong. Like they were
Actually,
bigger.
that's not entirely true. Like there definitely hits a point, I want to say like by the late 60s, where they outsell them.
Okay.
And it's kind of like they never look back after that, to be honest.
It's never changed.
Okay. But Warner Brothers, as a movie studio, owned the properties, so they had more force in pop culture.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Superman and Batman and Co. had more pull until the 2000s, and Marvel sort of had a clean slate because in the 80s and 90s, X-Men was the top-selling comic. That was the most popular thing. That had the most swing in the comic book industry. But it wasn't until the 2000s when the movies came, and then, but for instance, Iron Man was the first Marvel film. No one bought Iron Man as a comic. Iron Man is sort of a B tier character throughout history, compared to like the X-Men and Spider-Man. So things really flipped cultural wise for those two companies. And DC was just caught flat-footed by it to begin with.
And I think you bring up a good idea that James Gunn does really well too, because the same thing with Iron Man, since the world wasn't purely established, James Gunn can take sort of these unknown characters and then absolutely put them over in wrestling terms.
Establish a world.
You know, I doubt everyone knows who Peacemaker was, or Polka Dot Man, or even King Shark. Like, come on, man.
Well, actually, I was going to point this out because Derek said that Iron Man is a BT character, and this is the thing that I think that Marvel has done always really well. We were talking about the DC universe has this hierarchy. Like, there's the A-list, the B-list, the C-list, the D-list, right? In the Marvel universe, everyone gets an A-list moment. Kind of always. So Iron Man may not be the top selling book, but within the Marvel universe, he's an important character. He's an important figure. He's the Avenger. Like, you know what I mean? America might not be the Jubilee, right? Like Captain America might not be the top selling book, but to the Punisher, he's Captain America. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Absolutely. You know, that is the hierarchy in the universe.
And so James Gunn, again, is able to that gives me hope for the future, to be honest. Real quick, let me jump into Black Adam real quick, because there's been a lot of controversy about old Black Adam.
Did we all see it? Did you all see it in the theater?
I saw it in the theater.
I did go see it in theaters. I did.
What were your takes on Black Adam? I'll let you go first.
I'll go first.
I don't know who's going first.
I'll go first. I thought it was like a beautiful mess. Like it had all those problems that for me, that Shazam had, where this lore is ridiculous and we're spending a lot of time with it. I don't really care. But at the same on the same hand, it was also like a big spectacle, and The Rock brought his rock graffitis, and it was a lot of crazy stuff going on, and you know, it was like goofy, but it was okay. It's a comic book movie, like, and I don't try and use that as an excuse, but I'm like, this is Black Adam, like they're trying. So I thought it was like a solid okay plus film. It was a big spectacle. It was all right. It was dumb. They're all somehow dumb, but it's okay, whatever. And I really liked, just to kill two birds with one stone, I really liked seeing Henry Cavill come back at the end. And the idea of them duking it out was great. It's sad knowing it's not going to happen, but it was fun that they brought it back anyway. Like, for some reason, those little moments for me mean more than an entire movie in terms of payoff sometimes. But
I will say this, that maybe that's what The Rock was betting on. Like, I'm sure it's so here's the interesting thing about that movie, and I'll let you guys react to it too. That director is actually a solid action director. It's actually somebody I covered quite a bit on Action A Go-Go, because I thought he was really knocking it out the park at one point in time. But of course, it's a big production. It's kind of a project for The Rock, and so I'm sure that the production ultimately kind of gets out of your hands when you're at that level. But I could also imagine that pulling in Henry Cavill to do that cameo at the end was almost trying to make the movie bulletproof in a way. You know what I mean? Joaquin, you saw Black Adam. What did you think of it?
Okay. So when I did my review for Black Adam, when it came out a couple months ago, I was way too nice on that movie.
Oh, okay.
Like,
did you rewatch it and reconsider?
Oh no, I just okay. When I saw Black Adam in the theaters, I appreciated up front that it was saying, all right, this is just going to be a dumb action movie. Just like story is secondary to fights. Like this is a fight movie. Any story progress that happens is going to just be an excuse for characters to fight each other. And I was like, all right, cool. This is Injustice. All right, this is just Injustice the movie. Fine. But then the movie insults me by trying to like have ideas, and it's like, see the Intergang is like the IDF, and it's like no,
Yeah.
You're saying like, oh, so now you're trying to think,
Right, yeah.
No, don't you dare try to talk about geopolitics in this stupid Mortal Kombat engine.
Yeah, you're excited about Intergang being the IDF. That is so funny. That is hilarious. Yeah, I had a moment too where I was like, do we want to go here? Because this is kind of weird.
I mean, I want to go there because I think that kind of stuff is interesting to do with superheroes. It
definitely is, yeah.
This movie is not that. This movie is like, this is like Catwoman. This is literally Catwoman. This is like if Catwoman started talking about like Harvey Weinstein in 2003. It's like, don't shut up. This is here for Halle Berry to look hot. Don't you dare try to make me think about stuff. That's what Black Adam was. Black Adam is explosions. Don't make me think about things.
A lot of explosions. Oh my god.
Yeah, a lot. Yeah.
And like weird, trying to take Jeff Johns material and like also make it dumber than it already kind of is. But I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, I will say I did one thing I did appreciate about the movie is that like it didn't introduce. It tried to do what the Suicide Squad did, which is it introduces these secondary characters without really actually, I mean, they're kind of part of Task Force X, right? So like it introduces like Dr. Fate and Hawkman, et cetera, and like it's kind of cool to be like, oh, we're just gonna do this.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. I appreciate that. But you, Joe, what did you think of? What did you think of Black Adam, Joe?
I want The Rock to be my best friend, so I'm gonna be nice as I can. But let's be honest though. Like when I was done watching it, I was like, "Oh, good job, guys! You clicked off all the boxes that you need to click to be like the type of movie, like when you're like, what do we need? What's a focus grouped movie? You know what I'm saying? Like, these are all the boxes. And for some reason,
it was a Rock film.
Yeah. But like when I was watching this, or when I was hearing you guys talk, for some reason, the memory of me watching the movie Van Helsing like kept in my head because I remember. I used to watch, like, it used to be on TV, like on PBS or whatever, like those, where they show those movies. And I remember like the day, like 4 hours went by and I was like, damn, Van Helsing is still on. But because you just keep on seeing the same action. You just keep seeing action. Like, it's just a movie I have on the background while there's a party happening. So instead of having music, you just put on Black Adam and you just get that attack.
Yeah.
I mean, I still can't get over the fact of like, listen, dude, technically, Black Adam at this point should not have his own movie. You know what I mean? It's like, did he earn this? It's like,
well, I mean, here's my thing: is technically Black Adam should be the villain in a Shazam movie.
Exactly.
And truth be told, I did say I like him, but I would have loved a more golden age approach to that character. I would have loved for them to put that story in the 40s. Make Billy Baston this like, gee golly, go get her type of kid. You know what I mean? And have Black Adam show up as the villain. Like, I think that would have been fun.
Now, I'm going to do my normal thing, and I'm going to pick out something I really liked out of the movie. Now, taking consideration production value, the thing is freaking $1 bazillion, so it's going to look like gold. But I love the fact that Hawkman and Black Adam tore up that apartment.
Oh, yeah. That was good. That was a good fight.
And then she's just supposed to go back to that at the end of the movie.
Right.
Well, that was like that. No, but to your point, that's where the movie was really fun. Like when he's walking through the walls like RoboCop and stuff.
Yeah.
He's being a dumb robot, superpower being. Like that's when the movie was really fun. And that's when I was enjoying myself.
See, that's the type of movie.
And then James Gunn. Yeah.
Isn't that the type of movie? I don't know if you guys, I've been to so many parties in high school where it's just a bunch of people standing around and they would throw in some sort of like superhero nonsense just to have that action. That's Black Adam. And that's fine. I'll make money that way too.
Well, that's also the point that was made earlier by Troy, actually. The Black Adam movie, I think, is at odds with itself because Black Adam as a character over the past, I'd say past 20 years, has been at odds with itself. Black Adam, I'm not sure if you guys have like ever gone back and like read those like original Shazam comics. They are painfully racist. Like,
oh yes, no, they are like legit.
In the 30s, aren't they?
Yeah,
20s.
And you're flipping like, oh well, that's a baboon. Oh, that's a black person. Got it. All right. Well,
come on, America.
Yeah. But Black Adam hails from that era where he's just like the evil brown people over there trying to come over and take and control our lives. Like that's what that character is. And over the past couple of years, DC has tried to make strides in making the character less of a racist propaganda tool and kind of like moving him out of that racist stereotype,
like into an anti-hero, kind of, right?
Yeah, but it's also weird because when they try to make him an anti-hero and make him like the king of Kahndaq, that goes into like the far extreme, like the other extreme of him being a racist stereotype of the conqueror, and it's like, all right, guys, you tried.
Part of me is wondering, because like I haven't read a lot of that Golden Age stuff, but I did read that character when they were kind of introducing him into the 52. And like part of me kind of started to wonder if they were transitioning because for The Rock, like, you know what I mean, like because The Rock's been kind of like beating his chest about this thing for 20 years almost, I want to say. So I kind of always wonders like, they're really positioning this thing for, again, he's been talking about Black Adam for a good minute.
Comics, both Marvel and DC, I always see that they do that all the time. They're like, X-Men movies coming up. Let's push X-Men and have a big angle towar's that. They always because they can do that monthly. You know, they can set that up.
Them beta testing ideas too to see what gets.
Well,
all those sites are owned by the studios now. Like, watch out for that. By the way, but
are you disappointed that Henry Cavill will no longer be Superman? Derek says yes.
After they teased it so well, yes.
Yeah. What do you think? What do you think? What about you, Joe? What do you think about that?
You know what? These announcements, I feel like all these announcements, and I'm going to pull my bad word card. All these announcements are freaking bullshit, dude. I don't trust anything at this point until that movie's in the theater.
Yeah. You struck a great point. That is 100% true. I am so confused as to what is going on, and I'm going to call Marvel out for this as well. Like, I was informed that Giancarlo Esposito is not going to be in an X-Men film, but then I saw something today about him wanting to be in an X-Men film, and I'm like, what the hell is going on? And the Henry Cavill drama. I'm sorry, I'm not. 1 second. The Henry Cavill drama is like the same thing. Like, you don't know what the hell is real news and what's fake news, and it's hard to track. Like, period. End of discussion. Like, I want to get excited for something, but you can't because is it BS? Or is it a real planned thing that's going to happen?
Or also, let's think about this in filmmaking terms too. Like, I thought I was going to see the Black Cat in Amazing Spider-Man 2. They had that Felicia Hardy was there. They cut it out.
That's true. Yeah,
you could just cut it out.
Although that's a problem with like journalism, particularly pop culture journalism. But like journalism in general, there's no longer an emphasis on reporting what's accurate,
citing sources.
It's all just what's going to generate the most amount of confusion and outrage. Therefore, people can click on my article, and people will like, see, they went to the site, and here's the next big flashy thing. Are you confused? Click my video, click my news article to find out more. And
I mean, I would
that no one knows anything.
I mean, and I wouldn't even call it journalism. And I understand why you say that because that's technically what it should be, but it's really just PR at this point.
Yeah, they're not going to get Pulitzer, right?
It's just.
I want to say it's even worse. It's worse than PR. Some of it's PR, and some of it is clickbait, and the distinction is really thin right now, if impossible to determine.
So here's a far reach that. This is like a long shot, and I might be stretching out my reins, but you know, might be cool if James Gunn throws in some milestone stuff, some characters in there. I would like that because I don't care about a black Superman because he's dude, come on, why? Well, let's get the characters that are freaking not white. Why not?
Yeah.
There's a lot of those,
and it runs off this weird kind of, and I see where it comes from, and I appreciate the intent behind it, but it's a very short-sighted and ignorant notion that, it's an ignorant attempt at progressivism of giving the people of color a chance, where it's like, they're black analogs to almost every pop culture character. I don't want a black Peter Parker Spider-Man movie. Just make a Static Shock movie. I don't want a black Superman movie. Just make a movie about Icon.
Yeah.
I don't want I don't want like a movie about
what?
Exactly. Like I don't want a movie about like, we have Hispanic Spider-Man. Blue Beetle's right there. These characters do something with them.
But also, let's bring up the idea that we were talking about. The same thing with these are to like the mass audience, unknown characters. So it's a clean slate opportunity.
Yeah.
Put them over, right? It's like I was like in the comic book store like 2 days ago, and I saw like the Milestone Omnibus. I was like, dude, that's a gold mine right there of these amazing characters. And if we are digging deep, that is in that. I mean, I actually don't know who owns. I guess that's still under DC, right?
It's still under DC, yeah.
There you go. It's not like it's not like they have to ask somebody.
Can you? Okay.
Yeah, you
can hear me now.
Okay.
Yeah. But you lost your red light, Troy.
I lost my red light. Oh yeah. That was actually Google taking over. It was 6 o'clock. But no, I was actually just going to say, like, just not to get too much into the Marvel stuff. Derek mentioned the Giancarlo Esposito thing. There's been a big push to get Professor Xavier and Denzel Washington play Magneto. And so my argument has always been like the X-Men movies didn't even get the black right the first time. Yeah. So why are we race swapping these characters now? And that's all I'm going to say about that. I'm going to move on.
It's just a push now to change things for the sake of changing things. And at this point, I'm more for supporting creators than characters.
Yes,
like,
I agree.
A level deeper, like some people on this podcast or whatever it is, literally like support creators of color, not just characters of color, because the characters can be swapped out. But there's real people out there that need your support, that need you to buy their comics, their books. I'm one of them. Please buy my book real quick. But no, you need to support creators, especially in the age of AI, which is going to swallow up a lot of jobs. But anyway, I don't trust. I can't trust a lot of news, period. And it's frustrating. I'd almost like to see them both play it and maybe have a different angle on the civil rights aspect of the X-Men. But also, I've invested a lot of money into these characters, and for them to swap them out like they're playing cards is, disingenuous.
It does feel disingenuous. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I personally feel like we were talking about this before, how you're saying like, oh, Superman, the 70s was big, Batman, and then became like, then the X-Men. I feel like we might be in that tone of switch again, because people might be getting tired of Phase 4 Marvel, that it might be time for DC to rise up, and maybe that is why the Warner Brothers has taken that chance with the flooding of the.
I think it's very possible. I think it's very possible if it happens. Actually, all right, just real quick because it's the clock, and I want to get to my final point, and then I feel like this actually dovetails perfectly into our final point, right? So James Gunn, right? It seems like we're all kind of fans of his work, right? And you guys can go in any direction you want with this. I'll give us some more time to just talk about this in detail. Do you consider James Gunn's involvement a positive?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. All right, Derek.
I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to expound upon it because I have a huge ego. But no, I think this is a really unique time in like comic book / movie history, because Kevin Feige was really sucking up a lot of attention and really sort of famous as a producer, as like a point man in a studio, which I think was unique compared to, the position Spielberg had with movies or in pop culture, or the position George Lucas had in pop
for sure
and movies. So, and I think James Gunn is like a true believer. Like, I think he's the real deal. So it's going to be really fascinating to watch what Warner Brothers and DC does under his leadership. Having said that, he did say this. It's going to be a 10-year process. And it might be a fun 10 years with him being kingmaker. Like, yeah, do that. No, don't do that. Hey, maybe rethink that. And we'll go from there, because the Guardians of the Galaxy films were some of the best Marvel films and some of the most surprising Marvel films.
Those are my favorites.
Yeah.
And the Suicide Squad was freaking amazing. You know, it followed a completely different director with a similar story, but completely reinvented it. I mean, the guy's got talent and vision. So it's going to be nice to see him sort of replace Zack Snyder. And I think I'm very bullish compared to Marvel for the next 10 years, but we'll see.
Now I'm going to take I'm going to add to this as well, because we talk about James Gunn, but it's not just James Gunn. You still got Peter. How do you pronounce it?
Peter Safran.
Zafloff.
Because they're always. I mean, those are the heads. So it's not just James Gunn. So you sort of have like a checks and balances that's going to happen too. So to me, I've been a fan of James Gunn for a long time, so I'm sort of biased towards that. But I've been excited about everything he's done in this genre so far, even every other genre. Is it a positive? I think it's also a positive because I think at this point, this is, again, like I said, this is the flooding. We need someone, and it seems like he's handling himself, pretty great from what we've seen so far. So, though again, we haven't seen anything yet. We technically have not seen anything. This is just all speculation. As far as we know, in 2 months he could be gone.
Yeah,
that's the kicker. That's the kicker. Right?
That's totally true, but that's the caveat. But that's why we're so frustrated right now, because we're getting news about stuff like a true movie cycle is 4 years, from writing to pre-production to casting to production to release to aftermath. So
you're George Miller.
Exactly. But we're talking about it like he's got such a different job than what we're used to talking about. Like, he's not worried about a movie now. He's worried about the direction of a studio. Right? So this is a massive promotion for him.
Also, what's crazy is like this is all going to be intertwined with video games too. So it's like he's going to make a movie and they're also going into video game territory. So it's like, do I have to buy all this stuff now?
I feel like he should have done that in the first place.
And he specifically cited, him and Safran specifically cited Star Wars as their inspiration for what they want to do. And the Star Wars universe is like a massive, like sprawling epic of multimedia, like ongoing storytelling. There are characters in Star Wars that are introduced in comic books and novels, like books, and then they'll show up in video games and stuff like that. Like, I think a lot of people kind of forget with the prequels, a lot of the world building from the Star Wars prequels comes from the books and comics through the 90s under the era.
Yes.
Coruscant comes from the books. Like, that is a novel concept, the way in which the Force and the Jedi are depicted in the prequel trilogy. Granted, a lot of that does come from the first initial drafts of what George Lucas was working off of when he's trying to get Star Wars off the ground in the 70s. But a lot of the ideas were kind of like reworked and refined. And then what we see in the films is ultimately a reflection of what the books and comics and video games were building off of.
Well, honestly, real quick,
just
to build off that, true Star Wars fans are fans of the novels. Like those are the real Star Wars fans. Like,
right.
Movies are great, but I know people who can go into deep history of, Darth Plagueis and everything else. Where I'm just like, okay, whatever you say, but those novels are the true religion of Star Wars. Yeah, and that's a whole other thing. But anyway,
so there's gonna be like a massive undertaking for James Gunn. I am interested in what could potentially come of it. But to what we were saying earlier about DC being this thing that kind of, I would say, thrives as being this organism that experiences itself subjectively, where nothing is really like weaving in with each other. Everything's just kind of over here, over there, over there, over there. I think that's where DC shines. So if James Gunn really wants to do this whole like it's one big thing and everything's connected, I'm interested to see where that goes, but that's not personally what I want from an idealized version of like DC in multimedia. But I will say James Gunn as a storyteller, and this is the difference between James Gunn and Kevin Feige. James Gunn is a director and a screenwriter, and Kevin Feige is a producer. That's not a diss; it just kind of is what it is. So James Gunn will kind of, I think, make something similar to the MCU or what that's kind of turned into, but there will be this kind of added twist for the better, I think, where James Gunn does understand the filmmaking process and how, different writers or directors want to do kind of like different weird things because he's a creative himself. And also just like to James Gunn individually and the Superman movie that he's making and some of the other films that I think he's working on. I'm not sure if you guys have seen the Scooby-Doo movie recently. The Scooby-Doo movie, the films that came out.
I want to revisit those actually.
Like after rewatching those,
James Gunn's Scooby-Doo movies.
Yeah, like James Gunn gets working in an established universe. Like to the point where the second Scooby-Doo movie literally just feels like an extension of the original show. Like you can, and same with the Suicide Squad. Like Troy and I were talking about that the other day. Like that feels like you just cracked open like a John Ostrander like Suicide Squad annual, and you just replace Carl Kessel's art with like real actors. That's like James Gunn kind of gets that. So I'm excited to see what James Gunn kind of like brings to the table with those storytelling sensibilities, because I think his storytelling sensibilities are perfect for bringing to life a comic book universe in external media. But it is a thing of we don't have much information.
No,
like,
that's true.
Like he hasn't said anything officially yet. And in fact, the things that he has said officially is just him putting out like these rumor fires, so we know what he's not doing, but we don't know what he is doing.
Well, did he say that he?
It's so tough because like we all want it so fast, right?
Which is not how movies are made.
It takes time, man. But this moment does remind me. I'll bring it in comic book terms. This reminds me of like when Joe Quesada like became the head editor in chief of like Marvel. It's like you have someone that's working in here too. He might bring some new ideas. This reminds me of whenever there's like a new editor in chief in either Marvel and DC, and they got to bring a new vision to the whole line.
Exactly.
No, I was Derek. What were you about to say?
Well, I was just going to say, like, it's hard for us to transition to this because it's not a job where he's doing something. It's a job where he's saying no. That's the job of a producer. That was Kevin Feige's job.
Yeah.
His job's not to go make the movie. His job is no, don't do that. Do this instead.
Yeah.
That transition for us as fans is so hard because, Joe, you're absolutely right. We want it now. We want, a Henry Cavill to be in the Superman movie now. By the way, that's going to take 3 freaking years.
Right.
You're going to already you're going to graduate high school.
Because they fired him. So we're not even talking about something that's in production. And just to change subjects, like I think that's why The Rock sort of had a black eye professionally recently, or there's news of him like pissing off executives because he was sort of throwing his weight around with Black Adam. And by the way, it lost the studio money. So he was like gassing up something that lost them money and was pushing stuff around and got Henry Cavill in there for something that they ultimately decided not to do.
I mean,
so that's how complicated this stuff is at James Gunn's level. That's what I'm trying to help people understand. Like, he's not making a movie; he's making 10 films and telling everybody what not to do.
Here's a question: why did no one watch? Why did not enough people watch Black Adam? Why?
I think I think personally it has to do with the bank of that had led up to that movie. Like, I think that if this movie had, someone else I know said this, I don't remember who it was, but like they said, if the movie had about a couple of years ago, it probably would have been fine.
Yeah.
And I think that's the case.
I think
I feel like from my perspective, at a certain level, it's completely acceptable. You know,
I mean, it's not the worst of the DCEU movies. That's for damn sure. So.
No, it's definitely not the worst. But I've said this about The Rock a long time. I wish I was his manager because I'd have him in completely different movies.
You wish you were his wife?
His ex-wife?
His ex-wife.
It's not Danny Garcia.
Call me. Steal me away, please.
Who was also the manager at one point of Henry Cavill. I always forget.
I know
right,
that was
crazy.
Crazy like connection right there. His ex-wife managed him or something, right?
Well,
Yeah.
To your point about Black Adam not making money, and really a lot of the DC films in recent years not making money, a big thing, and it just kind of is what it is, unfortunately. DC is brand poison. You know, they're at this point now where there is this, and Troy was talking about this earlier, how there's perception versus reality. In reality, most of the DC films are like, pretty mediocre and fine. There's some really good ones, and there's some really bad ones, but for the most part, they're all right. Just like a lot of the Marvel movies. There's some good ones. There's some bad ones, but for the most part, they're all right. But Marvel has the perception of being the golden child.
Except Marvel does not have Joker. They don't have Joker.
True.
They'll never have that movie.
Fair enough. But like in terms of the pop culture consensus,
but they got Deadpool. Sorry, God.
Oh, yeah, true. But for the pop culture consensus, Marvel can do no wrong. That's why a lot of those films make bank, even though I don't want to get too deep into the whole Marvel thing, but like as far as I'm concerned, they put out like 5 Green Lanterns in a row. But like they.
In recent memory, yes, I would give you that.
Yeah, they don't have they don't have the same negative perception that DC has, which is why DC is kind of what people kind of point to when they talk about superhero movie fatigue, whereas Marvel doesn't have that problem. It kind of
doesn't have that problem.
The brand is like this self-sustaining machine at this point. It doesn't matter what they put out.
Things might be switching up now. I'm gonna give you some as an MCU apologist. Marvel is not perfect. I agree with you 100% on that. But I'm gonna give you some pushback on this, Joaquin.
Okay.
I don't think that it's like the perception of the MCU is that like it can do no wrong. Although there is an element of that. I will 100% give you that. There is an element of that. I think it has more to do with lack of trust, because at the end of the day, even if they switch things up a little bit, they're still telling the same story that they started telling in 2008. And you have that level of consistency with the DC movies. And, and I mean, like, because here's the thing. Yes, Steel, Dark Knight, Batman vs Superman, Wonder Woman 1984, and Suicide Squad are all part of the same universe. But at the same time, is Birds of Prey? It kind of not. Is Suicide Squad? It kind of is, but not. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of the Batman. No, it's not. Joker. No, it's not. You know what I mean? So it's kind of come to. I mean, Shazam really does feel like it's disembodied from all those. Like, if I really had to be real about it.
If I'm going to be real with you, I actually don't care if any one of these intertwine at all. Like,
I mean, again, it goes back to my whole thing. Continuity doesn't have to be DC's thing.
Yeah,
and it doesn't make it a better movie if I see Superman or if I see someone show up in the background. It's like, okay,
yeah.
If anything, it's like convoluted.
And that goes back to like the narrative DNA. Like, just I know comics and movies are different, but like you're still kind of pulling from the comics as like the foundation for like your adaptations. And the narrative DNA of Marvel and DC is fundamentally different.
Yes,
Marvel is very much like it's this like living, breathing organism. Where when you kind of think of like the iconic stories and the iconic character moments for all these entities within the Marvel universe, like you have Dark Phoenix Saga. That's an epic, major, like saga within the X-Men line. Like the reveal.
Derek got a warm feeling just thinking about Dark Phoenix.
Not the movie though, right? Not the movie.
Oh yeah,
not the movie. No.
So like you even look at like like the reveal of Magneto being the father of Pietro and Wanda. That's a massive reveal in the Avengers comic. You even look at like all the stuff where the Avengers die and or half the Avengers die, and then like you have this new Avengers team brought on board. They're all like these street level characters, and like all those kind of like massive like the consequences of those actions bleed into those individual character arcs. But that it's a big like team building thing, you know, like the Marvel universe is this universe where major progress is made in these massive like ongoing like character sagas, because the Marvel universe is an ongoing soap opera. The DC universe doesn't have that. When you think of the iconic DC stories,
they're kind of isolated.
You got Dark Knight Returns, All-Star Superman, like
DC New Frontier,
like they're all stories.
Kingdom Come.
They're all stories that take place in their own little like pockets over here. No one talks about the in-continuity stories. You know, like James Gunn, even when he was like talking about the comics that like he's looking at, that like not like, you know, him like this is what I'm adapting, but just like comics that he really enjoys from DC. They're all out of continuity stories. You know, the like two of the big ones recently were like Tom King stories, like Strange Adventures and Superman Up in the Sky. Up in the Sky is like a nebulous continuity story that could happen. That could have happened like 20 years ago. It could happen today. You never know. Strange Adventures definitely takes place out of continuity, because I don't really want to see Adam Strange's wife try to have sex with Mr. Terrific to come up with fun. But you know,
you need some of that though.
You know what?
I think comics and DC like period or movies need some of that. Like yes, the strength of Marvel is like the tide raised all boats. Like Thor was connected to Iron Man, was connected to Captain America, but the tide also lowers all boats.
Yeah. Sure.
So, you know, we could see some stumbles from Marvel moving forward. Whereas the hope I have with James Gunn and the DCEU is that we get more offshoot, strange stuff that's relevant, but it can be completely different. Like Peacemaker. Dude, I love
we didn't even talk about that.
Show.
Yeah.
Troy knows this. I thought that was a great, like, you took this character that was sort of an a-hole in the movie. You completely reinvent him. It's on HBO Max. It's sort of away from the big stuff, so you can invest less money. You can be more creative. And it was great. It was rock and roll. It was Americana. It was a bit skewing of pop culture, but whatever. It was really fun. And that's where I see things like Strange Adventures and the other stuff he's going to highlight could be really cool.
Yeah.
I personally
And the downside is that it's sort of weird that I heard Jason Momoa is going to be Lobo, which is sort of like a Whipshaw effect.
Right.
And Henry Cavill not being there, that's a Whipshaw effect. I mean, you got to get over it, move on. But you know, I'm more bullish than I am not bullish.
I do see Jason being Lobo. Dude, that's freaking perfect, man.
That is pretty.
That's great.
I don't know why that didn't happen.
Like, it happened in the first place.
I don't know why he's Aquaman. For Christ's sakes, he's Lobo too. Paint him blue. Put red eyes on him.
Yeah.
That's
I will close out because they're almost at an hour and a half. I will close out with this, right? In terms of my perspective on James Gunn's involvement, right? There are 7 people that don't get the credit they deserve, I feel, for making the MCU, right? It's Jon Favreau. It's Marcus Gilly, right? The 2 screenwriters, right? Who did a lot of heavy lifting. It is the Russo brothers. It's Joss Whedon. Yeah, I said that, right? And it's James Gunn. Like, those people injected those movies with genuine love for the comic books and for those characters. And Kevin Feige is a ringmaster. I'm not taking it away from him. There's some movies in the MCU canon that were pictures. I would probably maybe throw Ryan Coogler in there because there's some stuff in the last 2 Black Panthers. I was like, wow, did he read the comics? Because this is kind of great. This is kind of spot on. But I think that you know, those people in particular are speaking directly to me as an audience member. And so my attitude is give James Gunn the ball. I hope he's allowed to keep the ball and play with it, because in the shifting landscape, the musical chairs of corporate of the that we're all in, You never know. And I'm surprised myself because, like, yeah, I did not expect much from the Discovery merger once it happened, but here we are. And now I'm sort of like, oh, I'm actually in this. So we'll see.
And I hope James Gunn brings in Edgar Wright to do Plastic Man.
That'd be great.
Oh, that'd be interesting.
Great.
That would be interesting.
Oh,
That would be
man.
interesting. That would be kind of interesting. Guys, before we walk out of here, give yourself some shout outs. Derek, what do you want people to look at that you have been doing creatively?
actionagogo.com, actionagogo on Twitter. Also, the 2 novels I have are The Vicious Game and Knuckle Crack Bone on Amazon right now. You can purchase those right now. Just look up Derek Scarzella on Amazon. The Vicious Game and Knuckle Crack Bone. I'm working on a 3rd novel. It's called The Velocity Hunters. Keep an eye out for that. That is my next project. It's basically Hot Rodders in the future, and it's awesome. It's fantastic. It's fun. But hit me up. Let me know what you think and ask me some questions. I'm always willing to talk.
All right. Joe Carabeo, filmmaker Joe Carabeo. Where can people find you and what do you want them to look out for?
I got a lot of stuff I want to talk about. Well, one of the main things is I've been working with an amazing musician called Verge, and she released her newest album, Weeks, that came out today. That you should definitely check out on Spotify. I photographed the cover of the album, and I also directed or co-directed and shot one of her newest music videos for the song Secrets. That's actually a spoiler. I don't think anyone's supposed to know that, but now it's too late. But yeah, check out Verge online. I also have some of my own books that you can go on joecarabeo.com or strayproductions.com. We have Astray book number 1 is a collection of my photography. Also, Astray book number 2 is a collection of my photography. If we have censors, I'm going to flash it real quick. Boom. Oh, you got it.
Oh, sweet.
And I got number 2.
There you go. Nice.
Woo. But yeah,
picked it up at Baltimore Comic Con.
Exactly. And also I do some drawings. So I got my direct to ink books, the whole bunch of them, each dated by year. And of course I work with Karen Bolevsky on writing Curl Studio books, which we make we make a wacky world of amazing, crazy adventures, something about crime, something about burlesque dancers, and you guys should definitely check it out. KarenBolevsky.com and just Google us. Yeah, man. And also, that's my next film that's coming out there. Kara vs. Everyone is going into production. That's from the I'll guess you say a screen test. But imagine V for Vendetta and The Crow slammed against politics these days.
Nice.
Dark politics.
Nice.
So
okay. All right. Joaquin, Mystical Green Beanie, where can people find you?
You guys can find me on YouTube at Mystical Green Beanie. Find me on Instagram, Mystical Green Beanie. Find me Twitter, MG Beanie. I do live streams once a week on Wednesdays, 10:30. Try to do 10:30. It's usually like 10:45, 11 o'clock. But like 10:30 Wednesdays live streams. Let's talk comics, video games, movies, TV shows. Also started doing a lot more retro replays for older superhero games, but trying to venture out into some other non-superhero titles too, because there's a lot of games out there. And they're really fun to play. So yeah.
Almost as many movies.
Yeah. Also, just uploaded a video today about comparing continuity ironically, like we were just talking about, the benefit of comic book stories that are steeped in continuity and comic book stories that are standalone. And I use Grant Morrison's Batman and Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo's Batman, respectively, as the basis for that comparison. So, yeah, check it out.
Cool. Nice. And hey, guys, you are watching, if you're, this is on the Free Comic Book Day feed on Facebook. But I can be found at PREVIEWSworld. Free Comic Book Day is our sister site. Yeah, we have a show every week called PREVIEWSworld Weekly, where I hang out with Ashton and we talk about the comics that are available at your local comic shop this week. And then we talk a lot about intelligence, how it's going to take over the world, it seems lately. And we also give you some nerd news. We talk about stuff that's going on in the comic book industry. And we all weird questions and poll the audience with some of these weird whacked out questions that Ashton comes up with, and much more. So definitely check that. That's every Wednesday on Free Comic Facebook, on PREVIEWSworld's Facebook, on Free Comic Book Day's YouTube, on PREVIEWSworld's YouTube, every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern 11 a.m. Pacific. And that is it for this edition of the Roundtable. I'm going to be doing much more of these guys. So definitely you will be seeing these faces again in the near future. I'm going to be inviting some more of my friends to come on and talk. As you can see, they are knowledgeable. They know what they're talking about. You might not agree with them, but they know a lot about these topics. And we might not be right all the time, but we know a lot about these things. So again, thanks for hanging out with us, and stay tuned for more roundtables. And I will catch you guys later. Take care.